All right, buckle up, folks, because we're diving into the wild, wacky, and downright wallet-wrecking world of the Panic of 1837, a financial fiasco that makes your worst Black Friday shopping spree look like a walk in the park. Picture this. America in the 1830s, a land of big dreams, bigger debts, and a president named Andrew Jackson who decided to play economic whack-a-mole with the country's money. Spoiler alert, it didn't end well. This wasn't just a hiccup in the economy. It was a full-blown face-planting. Where's my paycheck? Disaster that left banks belly up, folks jobless, and the nation sulking for nearly a decade. So grab a snack, preferably not paid for with monopoly money, and let's unpack this glorious mess with a grin. First off, let's set the scene. The 1830s were like the Wild West of capitalism. Everybody and their cousin was betting big on land. Swamps, forests, you name it, like they were playing a high-stakes game of Monopoly. Buy all the properties, they shouted. Except nobody passed go, and nobody collected $200. Why? Because this real estate bubble was fueled by specie circulars and wildcat banks, terms that sound like they belong in a cowboy movie, not a history book. Basically, people were borrowing cash left, right, and center from banks that were printing money faster than a kid with a new printer. These weren't your fancy Wall Street banks. These were sketchy, pop-up banks in the middle of nowhere, handing out loans like free candy at a parade. And who was cheering this madness on? The American dream, baby, land, wealth, and a side of reckless optimism. Enter Andrew Jackson, our seventh president, who looked at this economic circus and said, "Hold my whiskey, I'm fixing this." Old Hickory, as they called him, was a fan of banks, especially the Second Bank of the United States, which he thought was a snooty, elitist money machine. So in 1836, he dropped the specie circular, a fancy way of saying, if you want to buy federal land, you better pay with gold or silver, no more of this funny money. Sounds reasonable, right? Wrong. It was like telling everyone at a buffet they could only use cash when they brought credit cards. Suddenly, nobody had enough hard coin to keep the party going. Land sales tanked, loans dried up, and those wildcat banks, they started collapsing faster than a house of cards in a windstorm. Jackson probably thought he was saving the little guy, but instead, he accidentally yeeted the economy into a ditch. Now, let's talk about the fallout, because, oh boy, it was uglier than a raccoon rummaging through your trash. By May 1837, banks in New York were like, sorry, folks, we're out of cash. Come back never. One by one, they slammed their doors shut, leaving depositors pounding on windows like they were auditioning for a zombie movie. Businesses that relied on loans, kaput. Factories, shuttered. Jobs, poof, gone. Unemployment skyrocketed, and people were trading their fancy suits for, how am I going to eat? Panic attacks. In cities like Philadelphia and Boston, bread riots broke out. Not because people loved carbs, but because they were starving. Farmers, who thought they'd struck gold selling crops to city folks, watched prices crash harder than a bad stand-up comedian. And don't even get me started on the cotton trade, America's big cash cow at the time. With global markets sneezing from a U.S. meltdown, cotton prices tanked, leaving southern planters high and dry with fields of fluff and no buyers. But wait, there's more. This wasn't just an American face bomb. It went global. Across the Atlantic, British investors who'd been pouring money into U.S. land and railroads were like, cheerio, mate, where's our cash? When they realized their investments were worth less than a soggy crumpet, they yanked their funds, making the U.S. economy scream, Uncle! Even Canada got dragged into the mess, with banks up north wobbling like a bad Jenga tower. The Panic of 1837 was like a bad cold. It started in one place, but soon everybody was coughing up financial misery. Back home, the ripple effects were brutal. Families lost homes, merchants lost shops, and kids probably lost their pet rocks because, well, priorities. For nearly a decade, America slogged through a depression that made everyone wish they'd invested in canned goods instead of swampland. Now, let's zoom out and get a little philosophical, because yes, this is a comedy show, but we've got layers. The Panic of 1837 wasn't just about bad bets and grumpy presidents. It was a wake-up call that economies are like Jenga towers. Pull the wrong piece, and the whole thing crashes. Jackson's heart was in the right place. Stick it to the big banks, help the common folk. But his policies showed that good intentions don't always mean good results. Sound familiar? Fast forward to today, and we're still wrestling with bubbles, dot-com, housing, crypto, you name it. Every time we think we cracked the code, some new shiny thing comes along, and we're all like, let's bet the farm. The Panic of 1837 reminds us that greed and overconfidence are timeless, like bad haircuts or tax season. So, what did we learn from this glorious dumpster fire? Well, for starters, the government stepped in with some fixes. Martin Van Buren, Jackson's successor, was stuck cleaning up the mess like a kid picking up after a wild party. He pushed for the Independent Treasury Act in 1840, which basically said, let's keep government money away from these shady banks. Smart move, Marty. It was a baby step toward modern financial regulation, like putting a leash on a hyperactive puppy. The crisis also sparked debates about banks, money, and how much power the government should have over the economy. Debates we're still having while scrolling X and sipping overpriced coffee. Plus, it gave us a juicy history lesson. Don't bet everything on one horse, especially if that horse is a swamp you're calling prime real estate. Let's wrap this up with a bow, shall we? The Panic of 1837 was a chaotic, cringeworthy chapter in America's story, full of big dreams, bigger mistakes, and a president who thought he could fix it all with a gold coin and a scowl. It tanked banks, crushed jobs, and sent shockwaves around the world, proving that when America sneezes, everybody catches a cold. So, next time you're tempted to invest your life savings in the latest can't-miss trend, whether it's NFTs or a plot of land on Mars, remember 1837. Take a deep breath, maybe check X for some wisdom, and don't bet the farm. History's got a funny way of repeating itself, and I'd rather not narrate the Panic of 2037, you know? So, what's your take? Are we doomed to keep tripping over the same economic banana peel? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Give that like button a high five, and subscribe for more history with a side of sass.